Hello everyone, my name is Eden and I'm the art director / 3D artist at 231 Studios, our indie game studio. For the past month and a half, my studio has been developing our first commercial game, Trolley Dash. Trolley Dash is a fast-paced, endless arcade game where you race to grab items, fill orders, and deliver them before time runs out. If you're a fan of Overcooked, we think you'll really enjoy Trolley Dash. In today's video, I want to show you guys some behind the scenes on how we developed our first commercial game in a month and a half as an indie company run by two friends. Let's get into it, shall we? Whilst I'm really proud of how Trolley Dash looks and plays now, it wasn't always this way. Whilst admittedly not much to look at in this state, believe it or not, this was enough for us to want to develop the game further. This prototype was created by our programmer James over the course of a weekend. Why did he do this? Because he was bored and had nothing else to do that weekend. Thank God that he was bored that weekend, because right from the get-go, Trolley Dash felt fun to play. It had no gameplay loop. In fact, at this point, we didn't even know the game was going to be endless or high score based, but just moving around the environment and picking up items and dropping them off at the counter felt really satisfying and enjoyable. Thus, Trolley Dash was born. It was even being referred to as Trolley Dash at this stage, except trolley had been spelt wrong, James cannot spell, and we thought it was only going to be a temporary name until we thought of something else. Turns out we couldn't think of anything better to call the game, so here we are. Once James showed me the prototype and we had both gotten excited playing it, it was time to develop the idea further. We discussed the game having a campaign, being multiplayer, and even at one point talked about having the game be a dungeon crawler with roguelike elements. Whilst I still really like all these ideas, we decided the most important thing for us as a studio was to get something out on Steam so people could play it. This is where we decided to create 5 levels for the initial release of the game, which would work as an endless, arcade-style, high-score game. This felt appropriate in terms of scope, while still allowing us to create a game that would be very replayable for players. We genuinely believe in Trolley Dash's potential, and would love to continue developing it further. Adding a campaign and the ability to play with your friends are at the top of our list. So if that sounds interesting to you, the game is available to wishlist on Steam right now, link in the description. Our current goal is to get to 100 wishlists, so if we can hit that, then we'll know this is a game that's genuinely worth developing further. Every wishlist helps and is very much appreciated. Alright, enough shilling to you guys, let's get back to the video. Now we had a prototype and an idea for where we wanted to develop the game, it was time for me to actually contribute to the project and make some art. Inspired by Polygon Runway's art style, link to their account in the description, give them a follow. I loved how soft and friendly their aesthetic was. Our goal with every game that we create is to have experiences that anyone can pick up and have fun with, no matter who you are. Having an approachable and appealing art style is a really important part of achieving that goal, and so Trolley Dash's art style was created. A rounded cube-shaped language with saturated colours and great lighting direction. Whilst the art style is approachable, I still wanted it to feel genuinely artsy and not corporate. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully the art style feels appealing rather than pandering. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I started modelling some of the assets we'd need for the game. That included things like walls, doors, bins, shelves and counters. As you can see, everything has been beveled to make it feel soft and rounded. We then combine this with a texturing process I'm really excited to talk about because I think it was rather clever. We've managed to make every asset in a level use a singular texture. This works as a huge performance save since we are significantly reducing how many draw calls we are using. Essentially, we decided on a colour palette that we wanted to use for each level, then laid that out onto a 256 by 256 texture. We then added other elements like a texture for the window and the scrolling signs. We then lay out our UVs onto this texture depending on what colour they need to be. Now we can have the same models in each level and just switch out their textures to give them a different colour palette. Whilst I was working on the first assets for the game, James was hard at work developing the gameplay. He gave us the ability to balance each level order rate, which would later evolve into a system where we use graphs to track the order rate, which we could then use to balance the game. I'm not going to pretend I understand anything about how this system works, there's a reason why I do art. Alongside this, he also added gameplay elements like spinning shells, obstacles on splines, and various other mechanics that we would later use to design the levels in the game. Talking about level design, the way I designed the levels was, let's just say, untraditional. I was moving to my flat at the time and had no internet and about a bar of 4G. So, tasked with designing the levels, I had to sketch out some shapes and concepts on paper, sit by my window so I could send them off to James, where he could then recreate them digitally in Unreal. This is why, later on, we had to go back and redesign a bunch of elements for the levels, since I was essentially having to guess what was fun to play when I first designed them. However, they did give us a good base to work from, which was easy to refine later on. Whilst I was struggling with internet troubles, James was designing skins for the characters. We asked our character artist friend Noor to design a base character design for us, which he did a great job with. Link to her Instagram in the description. James then took this base character design and started creating skins which we are planning to integrate into the Steam marketplace. This is still a system we're working on, so we'll keep you all updated on how that's going in the future. Essentially, we want to make the game free so as many people are able to play the game as possible. We do want a way to earn money off the game to finance our next projects, but we don't want this to affect the gameplay in any way, or have any insidious monetization tactics. That led us to the idea of selling skins that people could buy as a way to support development if they wanted to, but wouldn't unfairly benefit them in-game. We would love to hear what you guys think about this monetization system, so make sure to leave your feedback in the comments below. Initially, we were using a UI pack from Kenny to save on development time, especially since I did not have much experience in UI/UX design prior to this game. It eventually hit a point, however, where I felt the game would not feel truly complete until I created a cohesive and polished UI design. I have a background in graphic design, so I used Illustrator to help me create all of the UI elements. I decided on a Windows 95 aesthetic as my main inspiration, since the whole point of the game is people ordering stuff online, which your character then has to collect for them. Ultimately, I'm really proud of the UI for this game. It was a big learning experience and it took some effort, but I'm glad I spent the time doing it since it lifted the game's final look significantly. Having established the Windows 95 design motif, I used it to create the design elements for the Steam page. Getting these graphics put onto the Steam page made the game feel like a real product rather than just a prototype, and was when I started becoming really excited for the game's release. You might notice this strange gradient void that exists in this early form of the game. That is because originally we did not intend to make background elements for the game at all. However, even back then I knew something felt off. That's why, at this point in development, I started experimenting with different ways we could make the environment feel more grounded. I tried extending the base of the environment down to see if that would help, but we ultimately moved away from that. I made some extra elements to add some more details to our environment, like windows and a freezer to give some variation. These things helped, but something still felt off. James thought creating an external environment would take too long. But being the stubborn idiot I am, I decided to pull an all-nighter and see if I could surprise him by the morning with a completely transformed environment. And that's exactly what I did. Whilst it did take all night, it wasn't the huge time sink me and James both thought it was going to be. And ultimately, the results speak for themselves. It really is night and day between the old and new environment. From here, the game's development progressed rapidly. James was working on a ton of optimizations behind the scenes, and I started adding a bunch of polish elements to lift the game's visuals. This included creating delivery trucks that would whiz back and forth in the background and fill up the car parks, as well as creating actual items for the shelves rather than the placeholder shapes we had had in the project for the entirety of development. I also finished set dressing the rest of the levels and replaced the tree models with new ones, since I'd been given the feedback that the trees looked like Cheetos or corn dogs. They weren't really wrong. This freed up our lighting artists to do relights of all the levels. This was another phase of the project that boosted the game's visuals significantly. From here, it was all about tweaks and balancing. Some of the colour palettes on the levels really weren't working, especially with the new environments, so I switched a couple of these out and replaced them. This was also the phase of the project where I went through the levels and redesigned the layouts to work more cohesively. Some level redesigns were relatively simple, whilst other levels, like level 5, needed completely deleting and restarting. After I'd done these redesigns, James went through and balanced things like the order rates. That at last brings us to today, where we are gearing up for the release of Trolley Dash this month. I'm so proud of what the team has been able to accomplish in such a short time, and we cannot wait to share the game with you all once it is released. A big thank you to all our friends who've helped playtest the game. Without you, Trolley Dash would not be nearly the polished experience it is today. And thank you for watching this video. We've got a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline here at 231 Studios, so make sure to subscribe to keep up to date on all future projects. If you're interested in supporting development, we've opened a Patreon that you can donate to. Absolutely no pressure to do this. If you're watching this video, we're already extremely grateful. Finally, don't forget to wishlist Trolley Dash on Steam. Every wishlist helps and shows us there's genuine interest in the game. Thank you so much for watching this video.